McGraw in the morning on the Big 550 KTRS. This hour is presented by Affordable Kitchens and Baths. Visit them today at affordablekitchensandbaths.net.
More Anthony Weiner fallout. His brother's now getting into the game. His brother, his name is Jason Weiner. He reached out to this Sydney Leathers back in April saying, hey, honey, what do you think you're going to say about your brother or my brother? And she was like, ooh, I got creeped out by all of that. So anyway, that story continues. Joining us here in studio is David Stokes, Show Me Institute policy analyst. Good morning, David Stokes.
Good morning, McGraw.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How could you not be doing great with this weather the last few days?
You're sitting there nice and quiet, minding your own business. Normally, the pundits come in here and start raising holy heck.
Well, I never know exactly what you guys on the board are up to. You never. I sit in fear here of interrupting you like a half a second before you're about to go big with a breaking story.
What are we talking about today?
Well, the Crestwood situation is very interesting. They had the Crestwood Court,
right,
more commonly known as Crestwood Mall.
Right.
It closed down a couple weeks ago.
It's a ghost town. It's a ghost town. Drove by there a couple weeks ago. It was a ghost town.
Absolutely. And it was mostly a ghost town before they formally closed it.
Right.
But the city has not given the developers a tax increment financing package, or TIF, as we often discuss.
Right.
And they've been back and forth over the past year or two on it, and the votes have been close, but the developers, Centrum, I believe is their name, out of Chicago, never got the rather large subsidy they wanted, so now they've just pulled out and closed it down, and it'll be interesting to see what Crestwood does.
What is wrong with bulldozing that whole development and putting in nice homes?
Well, nothing is wrong with
Why
that.
does anybody want to do that?
Well, hopefully somebody will. I would say that because Crestwood is a point-of-sale city, meaning they keep the bulk of the sales taxes generated within their city, they want that to reemerge as retail,
right,
because they get to keep the bulk of that retail.
But there's some skewed logic, or there's something skewed in the system when you don't want people living in your neighborhood and you'd rather have business. Do you agree?
I do agree, particularly when you'd rather have a particular kind of business, mostly retail stores, over lots of other types that don't generate as many taxes for cities.
Right, yeah.
It is skewed, and that's why Crestwood now should consider joining the sales tax pool. I mean, they've already obviously lost a huge amount of sales tax revenue in the years past, and now with the ending closure of the entire mall.
Right.
So they can join the pool, still get good money from the sales tax pool, and then their city would benefit by putting homes there.
There's also, you drive down that area, and you've got everything is within 5 minutes of that Crestwood Mall. So it's not like they're dying to buy a pair of jeans somewhere, and there's nowhere to get a cup of coffee, and there's nowhere to get a loaf of bread. I mean, they've got all sorts of things right in there. So the question is, what do you need? And if you built, I bet you could get a good maybe 500 homes in that area, maybe, right? That's 500 families. That's another, 2,000 people? Imagine adding 2,000 people to that area for all the businesses around there. You would think that would then grow. Bring money in for the schools with property taxes, and then, heaven forbid, all those people shop and eat and buy right around there.
Well, it's a great location to live. I mean, it's nice. It's a nice south central location. It's close to everything. You can jump on 44 and pretty much get anywhere. I mean,
right.
When I was younger, I went to Crestwood Mall plenty. Catch up with some friends down there. It's a nice.
It was a food court. You were one of those troublemakers in the food court, weren't you?
I think I caused more trouble at the Galleria food court as we moved about.
Is the tide turning on TIFs? Why did Crestwood not give this TIF? And there were, what are you thinking? What's the reason?
Well, they didn't give it, and all I have here is from the news reports. Because the votes were close. They were generally like a 5-4 split or something like that.
Right.
So there were plenty of councilmen who were happy to give a very large TIF, but the city officials who were opposed to it, and they deserve a lot of credit for it, were just hesitant with no tenants being signed and no guarantees. They were putting a lot of faith in the developer to give them $27 million plus authority to implement additional sales taxes. This was a very large subsidy being consistently requested, And Crestwood deserves a lot of credit for the fiscal discipline.
Do you think there is a little bit of a tide turning, and maybe that just because of what happened in Ellisville, that maybe these local officials are like, wait a minute, we do not want to cause that debacle, and so maybe we need to start rethinking? I mean, do you think maybe the tide has turned on some of these TIFs?
Boy, I sure hope you're right there, McGraw. I think there's no doubt that city officials are going to look long and hard at it now after what's gone on in Ellisville,
right,
and the opposition we've seen to these types of subsidies in other parts of the state too. They passed it in Shrewsbury, but there was some strong local opposition to it, and they're seeing how you were able to do it in Florissant without a TIF. So I hope the tide's turning. If this show and if the Show Me Institute are playing a small role in helping that tide turn, then that's terrific.
You got to figure that all you have to do is watch what happened in Ellisville when every vote goes against elected officials who are voting for this TIF. And if you want to get reelected, or you want to show your face at your kid's school the next day, you need to think long and hard about giving somebody a TIF.
And you should have to think long and hard about it. And the problem in the St. Louis region for the past 20 years is they were given away like candy.
Right.
I mean, politicians weren't thinking very long and hard about rather massive subsidies. And it's certainly progress if all we are at is now cities and counties are being a lot more careful about doing it, and because that'll result in less of them. That said, Crestwood now has a big vacant empty store where 20 years ago there stood a thriving gigantic mall.
But there are a lot of empty, and I don't want to say strip malls because there are a lot of empty strip malls. There are a lot of empty big box stores all around. Now, they're not one giant parcel of land like Crestwood Mall, but I mean, there's that Best Buy in Manchester. I mean, you can the list goes on and on and on of these that linens and things on what is that, Clayton Road in Brentwood, just sits there. It's been vacant for 5 years now. I mean, that does not help anybody by having these big giant things just sitting there vacant.
It doesn't help anybody, but it's important to resist the temptation to say something's vacant here. We need to subsidize.
Right.
We need to subsidize a new development there, because that new subsidy is often just going to create a vacancy somewhere else down the road.
Right.
While taking money from people who you shouldn't take their money to do it.
Right. But I just find it fascinating that they don't want people living in their neighborhoods. Right? They'd much rather have retail outlets. That's
one of the good parts about the cities and the unincorporated part of the county that are in the sales tax pool. And people can read about the sales tax pool at showmeinstitute.org. I've got a lot of op-eds on it. Because then cities benefit just as much from having residents as they do from retail stores, and it allows development to go where it would occur naturally, and you benefit from it wherever. And I hope the people of Crestwood check out the video, which we very timely now just released a week ago, about Olivet and what happened to that neighborhood when they rejected a TIF a decade ago,
right,
and how over time that area is now doing very well.
I'd love to see a housing development go into there, right? I mean,
I would love to see it too, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, David Stokes, when can we read you? When can we see you?
You can see everything we've written on TIF and the county sales tax pool and all these issues at showmeinstitute.org, and follow it on our blog at showmedaily.org.
And your Twitter handle?
At David C. Stokes.
David Stokes, have a good week.
Thank you, McGraw.
8:46, traffic and weather. We'll check in with Mike Kelly, voice of the Tigers. We'll do that next on KTRS.